UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has announced new rules to try to curb the latest surge in coronavirus cases in England. These include the closure of public spaces like pubs and limits on the number of people at household gatherings. The extent of the restrictions will depend on the severity of outbreaks in different areas. The rules take effect on Wednesday. The city of Liverpool will be among the 50 towns and cities in England covered by the regulations. 44 of them are in the northern part of the country. Restrictions in these places will depend on the level of risk. Areas in the top of the 3 tiers will see a ban in household gatherings and the closure of pubs, bars, and other leisure areas. Johnson says financial support worth more than $1 billion will be made available to businesses affected by the new rules.
I take no pleasure whatsoever in imposing restrictions on these businesses, many of which have gone to great lengths to reopen as safely as possible. Nor do I want to stop people enjoying themselves. But we must act to save lives.
Well, for more, let's bring in Peter Holmes. He's a fellow at the University of Sussex UK Trade Policy Observatory, and he joins us from Brighton in the UK. Great to have you on the program with us. You know, it must be difficult to strike a balance between saving lives without devastating the economy. Do you think that this 3-tiered plan does that when we compare it to some of the blanket lockdowns that we saw at the start of the pandemic?
It's very difficult to judge. I am not an epidemiologist, I have to say that. But I think the thing one has to be clear about is there isn't a simple trade-off between economic and public health issues. Because if you don't have some sort of lockdown when the thing is just about to really take off, the economic damage in the long term can be much worse. What we've seen is that countries that acted earlier in the form of lockdown can get out of it quicker. So whether they've got this package right, it's very difficult to tell. A lot of questions about whether it's actually too crude, whether, for example, the hospitality sector really is the cause of a problem in the same way across all the areas that they've targeted. I think the answer is that nobody can be absolutely certain.
Yes, certainly. The Prime Minister says the government will expand economic support to those most affected by these rules, by these lockdowns. What could that look like, and what are the areas that are most affected by this?
Well, again, I mean, I haven't had a chance to look at the measures in detail, but I think you've got to bear in mind that there are a number of different objectives which these financial support measures are targeting. One is to support firms that are likely to go down. The second is to support the livelihoods and living standards of people who the workers in those factories. It's not always the same thing. Protecting people and protecting jobs is different. And then finally, we have the question of keeping the consumption levels in the whole economy up. So it's very tricky to target, to find a single instrument that will actually achieve all these different objectives.
The toughest restrictions, the 3rd-tier restrictions, will force bars, pubs, gyms to close, as well as restrict traveling. How critical are all of these sectors to the economy?
Well, the hospitality sector is certainly very important to the economy in a lot of the areas, particularly Manchester in the north of England, and also certain parts of the northeast in Newcastle in particular. So these are very important. But again, we've got this complex issue of the fact that if they don't have some sort of restrictions, the pandemic may carry on rising, in which case the effect on those sectors will be longer and worse. So it's not correct for people to say, oh, we mustn't shut this sector down because it's very important. The question is whether the shutdowns or the restrictions will actually reduce the spread of the pandemic. I mean, that's the key factor.
All right, some really great insight there. Appreciate you having you on. Peter Holmes, he's a fellow at the University of Sussex in the UK Trade Policy Observatory. Thank you so much for your time.